When wizards and Jedi collide, the Force itself trembles. In the shadow of Imperial rule, a stranger from beyond the stars awakens on sacred Jeddah. The harsh desert winds carry whispers of a grey prophet whose staff glows with power unknown to Sith or Jedi alike. Imperial troops march through ancient streets as this wanderer defies darkness with wisdom earned across countless worlds. The Empire has crushed rebellions before, but how can they fight an enemy who has already conquered death itself? The broken moon of Jeddah cast long shadows across the ancient temple ruins. Dust and memories were all that remained of the once great sanctuary of the Force. The Empire had taken what they needed from this holy place years before, leaving the faithful to scavenge among the remnants of their broken faith. The Temple of the Wills stood as a hollow skeleton against the night sky, its crumbling spires reaching toward distant stars that offered no salvation. This was a place where hope had died, where the light of the Jedi had been extinguished like so many others across the galaxy. Pilgrims still came, despite the Imperial occupation. They whispered prayers to gods who no longer answered, collected fragments of Kyber crystals too small for the Empire to bother with, and told stories of the Jedi Knights who once protected the galaxy. The Empire tolerated their presence, for now. These ragged believers posed no real threat to Imperial dominion, merely ghosts clinging to the ashes of a defeated religion. On this night, as the cold winds howled through the shattered temple corridors, the stars above Jeddah trembled. In the space between heartbeats, the fabric of reality shuddered. No instruments detected it, no sensors registered the momentary fracture in the cosmos, but the Force, that ancient energy that bound all living things, rippled with disturbance. In the shadow of a fallen statue, where the moonlight could not reach, a circle of blue light bloomed like a midnight flower. It spiraled outward, gaining strength and brilliance until it illuminated the entire chamber. The few pilgrims who witnessed it fell to their knees, believing they were seeing a vision granted by the Force. They watched as the light contracted, condensed, and then burst outward in silent radiance. When the light faded, a figure stood where none had been before, tall and weathered, draped in grey robes that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. His beard was long and white, his eyes deep and knowing, carrying the wisdom of countless ages. In one gnarled hand, he clutched a staff of twisted wood that hummed with strange energy. This was no Jedi returned from the netherworld of the Force. This was something else entirely, something from beyond the stars themselves. The old man looked around, his gaze taking in the broken temple, the trembling pilgrims, the unfamiliar constellations visible through the shattered ceiling above. He seemed momentarily disoriented, but not afraid. He had faced far greater horrors than displacement. He had battled shadows and flame across the endless void between worlds. This was but another journey, another task set before him. "Well," he said finally, his voice deep and resonant in the hollow chamber, "it seems the path continues onward, even when one believes the tale has ended." The pilgrims whispered among themselves, their voices hushed with awe and fear. Who was this stranger? What was the strange power that radiated from him, similar to the Force and yet somehow different? One brave soul, a blind monk whose faith had survived even the fall of the Jedi, approached cautiously. "Who are you, stranger? What brings you to this sacred place in our darkest hour?" The old man considered the question carefully before answering. Names had power, and he had carried many across the long ages of his existence. But here, in this strange new realm, perhaps simplicity was best. "I am a wanderer," he replied, "a guardian of the light in places where darkness threatens to consume all. I have been sent back, it seems, though to where I cannot yet say." He looked up at the unfamiliar stars once more. "I have been called Mithrandir by the elves, Tharkun by the dwarves, Incarnos in the south, and Gandalf by men of the west. But names matter little. What matters is why I stand before you now, at what appears to be yet another crossroads of fate." The monk's unseeing eyes widened. Though blind to the physical world, his connection to the Force allowed him to sense the power that emanated from this stranger. It was not the familiar current of the Force as he knew it, but something adjacent, something that resonated with the same fundamental truth. "The Force has brought you to us," the monk declared, his voice gaining strength. "In our time of greatest need, when the light of the Jedi has been all but extinguished, you have come." Gandalf frowned slightly. "The Force? I know not this power, though I sense it all around us, binding and connecting all things. It is not unlike the flame of Anor, the secret fire that burns at the heart of all creation." He tapped his staff thoughtfully against the stone floor. "Perhaps our worlds are not so different after all, merely reflections of the same eternal struggle between light and shadow." As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the shattered temple in hues of gold and amber, word of the stranger's arrival spread throughout the pilgrim community. Some believed him to be a Jedi master returned from exile. Others thought him a prophet sent by the Force itself. A few, more cautious minds, worried that he might be an imperial trap, a false hope designed to draw out those who still resisted the Emperor's will. Gandalf paid little heed to their speculations. He spent the morning hours exploring the temple ruins, his fingers tracing ancient inscriptions, his eyes studying the architecture of a civilization he had never known. The monk, who introduced himself as Chirrut, followed close behind, answering the wizard's many questions about this galaxy, its history, and the conflict that now engulfed it. "So this empire has hunted the Jedi to extinction," Gandalf mused as they stood before a toppled statue of an ancient Jedi master. "And the Emperor himself wields this dark side of the Force. It is an old story, one I have witnessed many times before. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The names and faces change, but the essence of the struggle remains constant across all worlds." Chirrut nodded solemnly. "The Empire believes they have won. The Jedi are gone, their temples destroyed, their teachings forgotten. Those of us who still believe in the Force must hide our faith or face death. Even here on Jeddah, where the Force once flowed so strongly, Imperial troops patrol the streets and monitor our gatherings." "And yet you remain," Gandalf observed, a hint of approval in his voice. "Faith endures even in the darkest times. That is its nature, its purpose." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the temple entrance. A group of pilgrims rushed in, their faces etched with fear. Behind them came the rhythmic march of armored feet and the mechanical breathing of Imperial respirators. "Stormtroopers," Chirrut whispered urgently. "The Empire's soldiers. They must have heard about your arrival." Gandalf straightened to his full height, his grey robes billowing slightly, though no wind blew within the temple walls. "Then it seems introductions are in order," he said calmly, gripping his staff more firmly. The stormtroopers filed into the chamber, their white armor gleaming in the morning light. Their blaster rifles were raised, trained on the pilgrims and the mysterious stranger in their midst. At their head walked an officer in a grey-green uniform, his face pinched with contempt. "Unauthorized gatherings are forbidden by Imperial decree," the officer announced, his voice echoing through the wan chamber. "Especially gatherings centered around Jedi superstition. You will all disperse immediately and return to your designated living areas for processing and interrogation." His gaze fell upon Gandalf, standing tall amid the cowering pilgrims. "And you, old man, you match no records in our database. Identify yourself and state your business on Jeddah." Gandalf leaned casually on his staff, studying the Imperial forces with mild curiosity rather than fear. "I am but a traveler, seeking wisdom in these ancient halls. As for records, I doubt very much that your empire, vast though it may be, has catalogued every soul in the galaxy, particularly those who have only recently arrived." The officer's face flushed with anger at the implied defiance. "You will come with us for questioning. The rest of you, disperse now or face summary execution for sedition against the Empire." The pilgrims began to move, their faces downcast in defeat and resignation, all except Chirrut, who stood his ground beside Gandalf. "The Force is with me," the blind monk murmured, and I am one with the Force. Your devotion to dead religions will not save you, the officer sneered, nodding to his troops. Take them both. Kill anyone who resists. Two stormtroopers stepped forward, their armored hands reaching for Gandalf. The old wizard did not move, did not resist, until the moment they touched his grey robes. Then, with a speed that belied his aged appearance, he brought his staff down hard against the stone floor. A shockwave of force erupted from the point of impact, throwing the approaching stormtroopers backward as though they were leaves caught in a gale. The other troopers raised their blasters, but Gandalf was already in motion. "You face no ordinary old man," he declared, his voice suddenly powerful, resonating with authority that made even the Imperial officer take an involuntary step backward. Light seemed to emanate from within Gandalf, his shadow growing larger on the wall behind him. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. The dark fire will not avail you, flames of Udun." The stormtroopers opened fire, their blaster bolts streaking through the air toward the wizard. Gandalf raised his hand, palm outward, and the energy bolts struck an invisible barrier before him, dissipating into harmless sparks. The pilgrims watched in awe as this stranger, this Gandalf, stood unbowed before the might of the Empire. With a sweeping gesture of his staff, Gandalf sent another wave of force outward, more controlled this time, targeting only the armed stormtroopers. They were lifted off their feet and hurled against the temple walls, their armor clattering as they fell unconscious to the floor. The Imperial officer reached for his sidearm, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. "What manner of Jedi trick is this?" he demanded. "No trick," Gandalf replied, stepping forward. "Merely a reminder that there are powers in this universe beyond your Empire's understanding. Powers that cannot be controlled by fear or tyranny." The officer fired his blaster at point-blank range. The bolt sizzled through the air directly toward Gandalf's heart. With a subtle movement too quick for any eye to follow, Gandalf deflected the bolt with his staff, sending it harmlessly into the ceiling. Before the officer could fire again, the wizard closed the distance between them and pressed the end of his staff against the man's chest. "Sleep now," Gandalf commanded softly. "When you wake, remember only that you found nothing of interest here, just old ruins and harmless pilgrims." The officer's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the floor, unconscious but unharmed. Gandalf turned to the astonished pilgrims who had witnessed the confrontation. "They will return," he warned them, "and in greater numbers. The Empire will not ignore such defiance. You must prepare yourselves." One of the pilgrims, an elderly woman whose face was etched with the thousand hardships of a life under Imperial rule, stepped forward. "We are not warriors, stranger. We are simply believers, keepers of the faith. How can we stand against the Empire's might?" Gandalf's expression softened as he looked upon these people, these guardians of a dying light. They reminded him of the hobbits of the Shire, small and seemingly insignificant in the grand struggles of their world, yet possessing courage that could change the course of history. "Not all victories are won through strength of arms," he told them. "Sometimes it is enough simply to endure, to keep faith when all seems lost. But if you wish to do more, to truly defy the darkness that has engulfed your galaxy, then I will help you for as long as I remain in this realm." Chirrut smiled, his unseeing eyes somehow finding Gandalf's. "The Force has indeed sent us a guardian, a grey prophet, as the ancient texts foretold." Gandalf raised an eyebrow at this. "Prophet? No, I claim no such title. I am merely doing what I have always done, standing against the shadow wherever I find it." He surveyed the gathered pilgrims. "Now, let us move these Imperial soldiers outside the temple before they awaken, and then we must prepare for what is to come." As the pilgrims dragged the unconscious stormtroopers from their sacred space, Gandalf walked to the temple entrance and gazed out at the holy city of Jeddah sprawling below. Imperial shuttles and transports moved through the sky like carrion birds. Patrols of stormtroopers marched through the streets, their white armor stark against the earth-toned buildings. This was a world under occupation, a people living in fear. It was not so different from the shadows he had fought before, in a realm now impossibly distant. Different faces, different names, but the same essential conflict that seemed to echo across all creation. The struggle between light and darkness, between freedom and domination, between hope and despair. Gandalf tightened his grip on his staff, feeling the power that flowed through it respond to his resolve. Whatever cosmic force had brought him to this strange galaxy, he would fulfill his purpose here as he had everywhere else his long journey had taken him. He would stand against the darkness, whatever form it chose to take. "So it begins," he murmured to himself as the twin suns of Jeddah rose higher in the alien sky. Another chapter in an endless tale. The incident at the temple could not remain hidden for long. When the officer and his stormtroopers failed to report back, Imperial Command dispatched a larger force to investigate. By then, however, Gandalf and the pilgrims had retreated deeper into the catacombs beneath the temple, ancient passages known only to the most devoted followers of the Wills. These underground chambers were vast and labyrinthine, carved from the living rock of Jeddah eons ago by the first believers. Here, hidden from Imperial censors, the pilgrims had established a secret sanctuary where they could practice their faith in safety. Small crystals embedded in the ceiling cast a soft blue glow throughout the caverns, illuminating murals and inscriptions that told the history of the Force and those who served it. Gandalf walked these halls with reverence, recognizing in them echoes of the great dwarf kingdoms of Middle-earth. His fingers traced the ancient symbols carved into the stone, symbols that spoke of balance, of an eternal struggle between light and dark, creation and destruction. "Your force," he said to Chirrut as they explored the depths, "it is not unlike the powers I have known, a great energy that binds all living things, that can be channeled by those with the wisdom and will to do so. Yet you speak of it as divided, light and dark, as though they are separate entities rather than aspects of the same whole." Chirrut nodded thoughtfully. The Jedi believed in maintaining balance, in serving the light side of the Force. The Sith, and now the Emperor, embraced the dark side, drawing power from fear, anger, and hatred. "And what do you believe?" Gandalf asked. The blind monk smiled enigmatically. "I believe the Force is simply the Force. It is our choices that determine whether we walk in light or darkness. I am not a Jedi, nor a Sith. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me." Gandalf chuckled softly. "A wise perspective. In my world, I was counted among the Astari, beings sent to Middle-earth to guide and protect its peoples against the Shadow. We were forbidden from matching power with power, from ruling through might. Instead, we were to inspire, to kindle the hearts of those who would stand against darkness. It seems our purposes were not so different from your Jedi." Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by a young pilgrim who rushed into the chamber, breathless with urgency. "Imperial troops are searching the entire holy city," she reported. "They are arresting anyone suspected of aiding the Grey Sorcerer, who attacked their soldiers." Gandalf's expression darkened. "It was not my intention to bring further hardship upon your people. They were already suffering," Chirrut reminded him. "The Empire needs no excuse to inflict cruelty. But now, perhaps for the first time since the temple fell, they also have hope. Word of what you did has spread throughout Jeddah. People are calling you the Grey Prophet, returned to challenge the Empire's dominion." The wizard sighed heavily. "Legends can be dangerous things. They inspire, yes, but they also create expectations that no single being can fulfill." He turned to face the assembled pilgrims who had gathered to hear the news. "I am not your savior. I am but one traveler, one guardian who stands against the Shadow. If you place all your hopes in me alone, you will surely be disappointed." An elderly pilgrim stepped forward, his back bent with age but his eyes bright with renewed purpose. "We do not expect you to fight our battles for us, Grey Prophet. But for too long, We have believed ourselves abandoned, forgotten by the Force. Your arrival proves that the light still shines, even in our darkest hour. That is the hope you have given us, not that you will defeat the Empire single-handedly, but that resistance is still possible, that faith is still rewarded. Gandalf considered these words carefully. He had not sought this role, this responsibility for the fate of yet another world caught in the grip of tyranny. And yet, was this not the very purpose for which the Valar had first sent him forth? To stand against darkness wherever it arose, to kindle hope in the hearts of the free peoples. "Very well," he said finally. "I will help you as I can, for as long as I remain in this realm. But know this, true victory will not come from without, but from within. It is your courage, your determination, that will ultimately determine your fate." The pilgrims nodded solemnly, understanding the truth in his words. They had lived under imperial oppression long enough to know that freedom could never be given, only taken. "What would you have us do, Grey Prophet?" asked the young woman who had brought news of the imperial search. Gandalf tapped his staff thoughtfully against the stone floor. "First, we must understand our enemy better. I have faced many forms of darkness, but this empire, this emperor who wields the dark side of your force, is unknown to me. Tell me of his strengths, his weaknesses, the nature of his power." So began a council of resistance in the depths beneath Jeddah's fallen temple. The pilgrims shared what little they knew of Emperor Palpatine and his enforcers, particularly the one called Darth Vader, a towering figure in black who commanded the dark side of the Force with terrible efficiency. They spoke of the Death Star, a battle station of unimaginable destructive capability that had once mined Jeddah for kyber crystals to power its super laser. Gandalf listened intently, his ancient eyes growing troubled as he recognized in these descriptions the same lust for domination that had driven Sauron, Saruman, and countless other servants of darkness throughout the ages. Different forms, different methods, but the same corrupted spirit. "This emperor has centralized his power," Gandalf observed. "He rules through fear and maintains control through his military might. Such regimes appear strong, but they have inherent weaknesses. Remove the head, and the body flounders. Strike at key points of infrastructure, and the machine of war grinds to a halt. But we are few," objected one of the pilgrims, "and poorly armed. What can we do against star destroyers and legions of stormtroopers?" "You need not face their strength directly," Gandalf advised. "The greatest victories I have witnessed came not through superior force, but through courage, cunning, and unexpected action." He smiled, remembering a certain hobbit who had changed the fate of Middle-earth, not through might, but through resilience and compassion. Sometimes the smallest hands perform the greatest deeds. He turned to Chirrut. "You and your fellow Guardians know Jeddah better than any Imperial officer ever could. You know its people, its hidden paths, its rhythms and flows. This is your advantage. Use it." As night fell over Jeddah city, Gandalf's Council of Resistance formulated their first acts of defiance. Small groups of pilgrims were dispatched to spread word of the Grey Prophet throughout the city, to kindle hope in the hearts of the oppressed. Others were tasked with gathering information on Imperial patrol patterns, troop deployments, and supply chains. Gandalf himself remained in the catacombs, deep in meditation. His coming to this galaxy had not been of his choosing, yet he sensed purpose in it. The cosmic forces that had drawn him across the void between worlds had done so for a reason. He reached out with his consciousness, seeking understanding in the strange currents of this force that seemed to flow through all things. What he experienced was both familiar and alien, an energy not unlike the flame of Anor that had empowered the Istari, yet wilder, less defined, flowing in currents of light and shadow. He felt countless lives connected through this web of force, their joys and sufferings resonating across vast distances. And somewhere, far across the stars, he sensed a darkness festering at the heart of this galaxy, a malevolence that bent the Force to its corrupted will. The Emperor, Even from such immense distance, Gandalf could feel the twisted power of this Sith Lord. It reminded him of Sauron at the height of his strength, a will that dominated lesser minds and bent them toward destruction. But there was something else there too, something that gave the wizard pause, a deep cunning, a patient malice that had orchestrated events across decades. This was no brutish tyrant, but a master manipulator who had seized power through guile as much as force. Gandalf opened his eyes, his meditation complete. He had taken the measure of his enemy as best he could from afar, and found him formidable indeed. This would not be a swift battle, nor a simple one. But he had faced darkness before, had even fallen into shadow himself, only to return stronger than before. Whatever trials awaited him in this strange galaxy, he would face them with the same unwavering resolve that had carried him through countless struggles across the long ages of Middle-earth. As dawn broke over Jeddah City, Imperial patrols intensified their search for the mysterious grey-robed figure who had defied them. Stormtroopers moved from house to house, checking identifications and questioning residents. Scout troopers on speeder bikes patrolled the outskirts, scanning the wastes for any sign of insurgent activity. TIE fighters screamed overhead, their distinctive engines howling like predators on the hunt. In the marketplace, a patrol of stormtroopers confronted an old woman selling meager wares from a small stall. "We're looking for an elderly man in grey robes," the patrol leader demanded. "He was last seen near the temple ruins. Anyone harboring this fugitive will face immediate execution." The old woman regarded the faceless helmet impassively. "Many pilgrims come to Jeddah wearing robes," she replied. "It is our tradition." "This one attacked Imperial forces," the stormtrooper snapped. "He used some kind of force power. If you know anything, it would be wise to tell us now." The woman's weathered face revealed nothing. "I know only that the Force works in mysterious ways," she said. "Perhaps your empire is not as all-powerful as it believes." The stormtrooper raised his blaster rifle, aiming it at the old woman's face. "That sounds like sedition, citizen. Perhaps you need to be reminded of the consequences of defying the Empire." Before he could act on his threat, a voice rang out from the alley behind them. "I am the one you seek. There is no need to terrorize innocent merchants." The stormtroopers whirled around, blasters raised, to find Gandalf standing calmly in the mouth of the alleyway, leaning on his staff as though he had not a care in the world. His grey robes were dusty from the Jeddah winds, but his eyes gleamed with an inner light that made even the battle-hardened soldiers hesitate. "Surrender now, and the Emperor may show mercy," the patrol leader ordered, though his voice lacked conviction. Gandalf tilted his head slightly, regarding the stormtroopers with something akin to pity. "I have faced shadows far more terrible than your Emperor," he replied. "I have battled a demon of the ancient world, fallen through fire and water, and returned. Do you truly believe your weapons frighten me?" The stormtroopers opened fire, their blaster bolts streaking toward the wizard. With a swift motion of his staff, Gandalf deflected the energy blasts, sending them careening into the walls of surrounding buildings. The marketplace erupted into chaos as civilians ran for cover, stalls overturning in the panic. Gandalf strode forward, no longer the seemingly frail old man, but a figure of power and authority. "I did not come to this realm to wage war," he declared, his voice carrying over the din of the marketplace, "but neither will I stand idle while innocents suffer under tyranny." With a thrust of his staff against the ground, he released a pulse of energy that sent the stormtroopers flying backward, their armor clattering as they struck the hard-packed earth. He moved among them with surprising speed, touching each one lightly with his staff, sending them into a deep slumber. The civilians who had witnessed this display emerged cautiously from their hiding places, their eyes wide with wonder and renewed hope. Gandalf addressed them directly, his voice gentle yet carrying a note of warning. "The Empire will send more troops," he told them. "They cannot allow such defiance to go unchallenged. Those who wish to avoid the coming conflict should leave the Holy City now, while there is still time." An old man stepped forward, his back bent with age but his eyes fierce with determination. "This is our home, Grey Prophet. We will not abandon it to the Empire's mercies." "Then prepare yourselves," Gandalf advised. "Gather what weapons you can. Establish hiding places and escape routes. The storm that approaches will test you all." He turned to go, but the old woman whose stall had been threatened caught his sleeve. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you truly sent by the Force to free us from the Empire's grip?" Gandalf smiled gently. "I was sent, yes, though by what power I cannot say with certainty. As for freedom, that is not a gift I can bestow. It must be claimed by those who desire it, fought for and won through their own courage and sacrifice." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "But know this, you are not alone in your struggle. Light persists, even in the deepest darkness." With these words, he departed, vanishing into the labyrinthine streets of Jeddah City before Imperial reinforcements could arrive. Behind him, he left whispers of hope and rebellion, seeds that would soon blossom into open resistance. In the days that followed, stories of the Grey Prophet spread throughout Jeddah and beyond. Pilgrims carried tales of his powers and his defiance of imperial authority to other worlds, igniting sparks of rebellion wherever they traveled. On Jeddah itself, citizens who had long submitted to imperial rule began to find their courage, engaging in small acts of defiance, redirecting supply shipments, sabotaging equipment, providing false information to stormtrooper patrols. Gandalf moved among them like a shadow, appearing when needed most, then vanishing before Imperial forces could respond. He never directly attacked the Empire's troops unless innocents were threatened, focusing instead on guiding and inspiring the people of Jeddah to reclaim their own destiny. When he did intervene, he used his powers sparingly, understanding that in this world, as in his own, magic exacted a price from its wielder. After each use of his more powerful abilities, Gandalf would retreat to the catacombs beneath the temple to rest and recover his strength. He discovered that while his powers functioned in this galaxy, they drained him more quickly than they had in Middle-earth. This realm's metaphysics differed from his own in subtle but significant ways, requiring greater effort to channel the energies he commanded. It was during one such period of recovery that Chirrut approached him with troubling news. "Imperial reinforcements have arrived," the blind monk reported. "Not just more stormtroopers, but specialists, hunters." Gandalf looked up sharply. "What manner of hunters?" "Inquisitors," Chirrut replied, his normally calm voice tinged with dread. "Force wielders trained by Darth Vader himself to hunt down and eliminate any who might threaten the Empire's monopoly on force power. They sense disturbances in the Force, and your presence has created ripples they could not ignore." The wizard frowned deeply. This was an unwelcome development, but not an unexpected one. He had faced ringwraiths and other fell servants of darkness before. These inquisitors would be formidable adversaries, but not beyond his measure. "How many?" he asked. "3, according to our sources," Chirrut answered. "They arrived on a specialized Imperial shuttle and have established a command center in what was once the Temple of the Khyber. They have brought with them purge troopers, elite soldiers specifically trained to assist in eliminating Force-sensitive targets." Gandalf rose to his feet, leaning slightly on his staff. Though he had regained much of his strength, he knew that confronting these inquisitors would demand all of his power and wisdom. "Tell me about these hunters. What are their capabilities? Their weaknesses?" Chirrut sat cross-legged on the stone floor, inviting Gandalf to join him. "The Inquisitors were once Jedi, corrupted and turned to the dark side after the fall of the Republic. They wield lightsabers, energy blades that can cut through almost any material. Their weapons are unique, double-bladed and mounted on circular hilts that can rotate, allowing the blades to spin like deadly wheels." Gandalf nodded, absorbing this information. "And their command of this force? How does it manifest?" They can sense the presence of other Force users. They can move objects with their minds, enhance their physical abilities, even influence the thoughts of the weak-willed. Chirrut's unseeing eyes seemed to look inward, remembering. I once witnessed an Inquisitor lift a man into the air and crush his windpipe without ever touching him. They are merciless, driven by fear of failure, for they know the price of disappointing their masters. Fear is both their strength and their weakness, Gandalf observed. It drives them, but also blinds them. They see only through the lens of power and domination, missing other paths, other possibilities. He stroked his beard thoughtfully. We must be cautious, however. If these Inquisitors are as formidable as you describe, a direct confrontation would be unwise. Chirrut smiled faintly. You speak like a Jedi now, Grey Prophet. Patience and circumspection were their virtues as well. Wisdom knows no boundaries of world or tradition, Gandalf replied. It is the same truth dressed in different garments. He rose to his feet, decision made. I will not hide from these hunters, but neither will I seek them out needlessly. Let us continue our work, strengthening the resistance, preparing the people for what is to come. When the moment is right, we will face these Inquisitors on our terms, not theirs. But fate, as always, had its own designs. That very evening, as Gandalf ventured into the city to meet with a group of resistance leaders, he sensed a disturbance in the Force. A cold presence, calculated and predatory, moving with purpose through the crowded streets. The hunter had found its prey. Gandalf changed direction, heading away from his intended meeting place, unwilling to lead danger to his allies. He moved deeper into the older sections of the Holy City, where ancient buildings pressed close together and narrow alleys offered countless paths of escape. Night had fallen over Jeddah, the stars obscured by heavy clouds that promised rain, a rarity on this arid world. In a small courtyard surrounded by abandoned dwellings, Gandalf stopped. The presence he had sensed was closing in, and he preferred to meet it in a place where civilians would not be caught in the crossfire. He planted his staff firmly on the stone ground and waited, his senses alert for any approach. The Grey Prophet, a voice emerged from the shadows, silky and dangerous. You've caused quite a stir among the local population, given them false hope. A figure stepped into the dim light, tall and lithe, clad in black and red armor that seemed to absorb the darkness around it. The face was concealed behind a helmet with a distinctive pointed visor, giving it an appearance both mechanical and predatory. At the figure's belt hung a circular device that Gandalf recognized from Chirrut's description as an Inquisitor's lightsaber. Hope is never false, Gandalf replied calmly. It is the light that burns brightest in the darkness, the force that has toppled tyrants throughout history. The Inquisitor circled slowly, studying the wizard with calculated interest. You are not Jedi, the distorted voice observed. Your presence in the Force is unlike anything in our records. What are you, old man? I am simply a traveler, Gandalf answered, turning to keep the Inquisitor in his sight. One who has seen many worlds and many struggles between light and shadow. Your empire is but the latest in a long line of dominions that believed their rule would last forever. All have fallen, in time. The Inquisitor laughed, a cold sound devoid of genuine mirth. The Empire is eternal. It has brought order to a chaotic galaxy, stability where once there was only conflict. The Emperor's vision extends far beyond what limited minds can comprehend. I have heard such claims before, Gandalf said, his voice hardening. From servants of darkness who believed themselves wise and far-seeing, they too thought their victories assured, their power absolute. They were mistaken. The Inquisitor's hand moved to the lightsaber. You speak treason with every breath. The penalty is death. Gandalf gripped his staff more firmly. I answer to a higher authority than your Emperor, servant of darkness. I was ancient when your master was yet unborn, and I will remain when his empire is dust and memory. With a harsh electronic snarl, the Inquisitor ignited the lightsaber. Twin crimson blades sprang forth from the circular hilt, casting bloody, light across the courtyard. Your powers may impress the weak-minded rabble of this backwater world, but they will not save you from imperial justice. Gandalf watched the deadly weapon with cautious respect. Such a blade could cleave through stone and metal with ease, according to Chirrut's descriptions. His staff, though imbued with powers beyond mortal craftsmanship, might not withstand a direct strike. "I do not seek conflict," the wizard said, making one final attempt at reason. "Leave now, and I will not be forced to defend myself." The Inquisitor's response was swift and violent. With inhuman speed, the Dark Warrior leapt forward, lightsaber spinning like a wheel of fire. Gandalf raised his staff, channeling his power into a barrier of force that deflected the first slash. The Inquisitor pressed the attack, blades whirling in complex patterns designed to overwhelm any defense. Gandalf gave ground strategically, using his staff to parry when necessary, calling upon bursts of force to push the Inquisitor back when the attacks grew too intense. It quickly became clear that while the Inquisitor possessed superior speed and aggression, Gandalf's millennia of experience gave him an edge in tactical judgment and economy of movement. "You cannot defend forever, old man," the Inquisitor taunted, voice undistorted by the physical exertion that would have left a normal being breathless. "The dark side grants infinite power to those with the will to use it. There is no such thing as infinite power," Gandalf countered, deflecting another series of strikes. "All energy has its source, its limits. The darkness you serve consumes rather than creates. It takes rather than gives. Such power appears boundless only to those who ignore its cost." The Inquisitor snarled and thrust out a hand. Gandalf felt invisible force close around his throat, lifting him slightly off the ground. The pressure increased, threatening to crush his windpipe. Though taken by surprise at the sudden attack, the wizard did not panic. He had faced the Witch King of Angmar, had dueled Saruman at the height of his powers. This was not the first time he had felt the cold grip of darkness. Focusing his will, Gandalf pushed back against the force choking him. Light blazed from his staff, brilliant and clear in the darkness of the courtyard. The pressure on his throat vanished as his own power disrupted the Inquisitor's hold. He dropped back to the ground, landing lightly despite his apparent age. "I warned you," Gandalf said, his voice no longer that of a gentle old man but resonant with power and authority. Light continued to emanate from his staff, pushing back the shadows of the courtyard. "I am not some helpless pilgrim to be hunted for sport. I am Gandalf, and I have returned through fire and shadow to fulfill my purpose." The Inquisitor hesitated, sensing for the first time that this opponent might be beyond their measure. But retreat was not an option. Failure would mean facing Vader's wrath, a fate far worse than death in battle. "Your sorcery will not save you from the Empire," the Inquisitor declared, activating the spinning mechanism of the lightsaber. The twin blades began to rotate around the circular hilt, creating a deadly disk of crimson energy. "The dark side is stronger than any power you command." The Inquisitor charged again, lightsaber whirling before them like a shield of fire. Gandalf planted his feet firmly and raised his staff high. As the Inquisitor closed the distance, the wizard brought his staff down with terrible force. "You shall not pass," he thundered, his voice echoing with command. The tip of his staff struck the stone courtyard, and a shockwave of pure force erupted outward. The very ground trembled and cracked as raw power surged from the point of impact. The Inquisitor was caught in mid-leap by the blast, thrown backward with such violence that the spinning lightsaber was torn from their grasp. The Dark Warrior slammed against the courtyard wall with bone-crushing force, armor cracking from the impact. Before the Inquisitor could recover, Gandalf was upon them, his staff pressed against the center of the black chestplate. "Yield," the wizard commanded. "I have no wish to destroy you." The Inquisitor's helmet had cracked from the impact, revealing one eye glaring with hatred and fear. "Death before dishonor," the Dark Warrior spat. "The Emperor will send others. You cannot stand against the full might of the Empire." "Perhaps not," Gandalf acknowledged. "But I stand nonetheless, as I have always stood against shadow and flame." His expression softened slightly. There is another path. The darkness has not consumed you entirely. I sense conflict within you, a memory of the light you once served. For a moment, something flickered in the Inquisitor's visible eye. Doubt, regret, a fleeting recollection of another life before the Empire, before the corruption of the dark side. Then it was gone, submerged beneath layers of hatred and fear. There is no escape from the dark side, the Inquisitor snarled. Once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Gandalf shook his head sadly. I have known others who believed themselves beyond redemption, irreversibly corrupted by the shadows they embraced. Some found their way back to the light, even at the end. The choice is never truly lost, only abandoned. The Inquisitor's hand moved suddenly to a concealed blaster. Gandalf sensed the movement and stepped back, raising his staff defensively. But instead of aiming at the wizard, the Inquisitor turned the weapon inward, pressing it against the damaged armor where the helmet joined the chest plate. The Emperor does not tolerate failure, the Dark Warrior said, voice suddenly devoid of its earlier confidence. And Lord Vader's punishment is worse than death. Before Gandalf could intervene, the Inquisitor pulled the trigger. A flash of energy, a final gasp, and the hunter collapsed, lifeless, to the stone courtyard. Gandalf stood in silence for a long moment, mourning not just the death before him but the corruption that had led to such an end. So falls another soul to shadow, he murmured at last. What manner of darkness is this Emperor, that his servants fear failure more than death itself? He knelt beside the fallen Inquisitor and gently closed the staring eye. Then he rose, retrieving both his staff and the Inquisitor's deactivated lightsaber. Such a weapon might prove useful in the struggles to come, and he could not risk leaving it for Imperial forces to recover. As he left the courtyard, Gandalf sensed other presences stirring in the Force. The remaining Inquisitors, no doubt aware that one of their number had fallen. The confrontation he had hoped to avoid had begun. Now he must prepare not only himself but the people of Jedha for the Empire's retribution. The night sky above Jedha erupted with fire as Imperial dropships descended upon the Holy City. Searchlights swept across rooftops and streets, seeking the elusive Grey Prophet who had dared to defy Imperial authority. Stormtrooper squads moved through the city in attack formation, breaking down doors and dragging suspected rebels from their homes for interrogation. In the central plaza, an Imperial officer used a hovering broadcast droid to deliver an ultimatum to the population. By order of the Emperor, a state of martial law is now in effect. Any citizen found harboring the fugitive known as the Grey Prophet will be summarily executed, along with their entire household. A reward of 1 million credits has been offered for information leading to his capture. Surrender now, traitors, or face the full might of the Galactic Empire. Deep in the catacombs beneath the fallen temple, Gandalf listened as refugees from the city surface brought reports of the Imperial crackdown. His face was grave as he considered what his presence had wrought upon these people. They had suffered under Imperial occupation before his arrival, yes, but his actions had intensified their oppression. I must leave Jeddah, he declared to the Resistance Council that had formed around him. My presence here brings only greater hardship to your people. Chirrut shook his head firmly. If you leave, the Empire wins. The hope you have kindled will be extinguished. The people will believe themselves abandoned once more. Better disappointed than dead, Gandalf countered. I did not come to this realm to lead these people to slaughter. An elderly woman who had once been a temple guardian before the Empire's coming leaned forward. With respect, Grey Prophet, that decision is not yours alone to make. The people of Jeddah have lived under Imperial boot heels for years. Many of us had resigned ourselves to quiet subjugation, believing resistance was futile. You have shown us otherwise. Murmurs of agreement rose from the assembled council members. A former merchant whose shop had been seized by Imperial authorities nodded vigorously. We were already dying, Grey Prophet, slowly, one freedom at a time. At least now we face our oppressors standing upright, with dignity. Gandalf studied these brave souls. reminded once more of the hobbits of the Shire and the people of Gondor and Rohan, ordinary beings rising to extraordinary courage when their homes and freedoms were threatened. Who was he to deny them their choice to stand against darkness? "Very well," he conceded at last, "but if I am to remain, then we must be smarter in our resistance. The Empire expects direct confrontation. They are prepared for it, equipped for it. We must find another way to oppose them, one that plays to our strengths rather than theirs. What do you propose?" asked a young woman who had been a student of the Force before the Jedi Purge had forced her into hiding. Gandalf tapped his staff thoughtfully against the stone floor. "The Empire's strength lies in its military might, its technological superiority, its ability to project overwhelming force. But such massive power is often inflexible, slow to adapt to unexpected developments." He looked around at the assembled resistance fighters. "You know this city, this world, in ways the Empire's officers never will. You understand its rhythms, its hidden places, the hearts and minds of its people. This is your advantage." He rose to his feet, moving to a crude map of Jeddah City that had been sketched on a large piece of parchment. "We will not meet their strength with strength," he declared. "Instead, we will be like the wind and the water, forces that seem weak yet wear away the hardest stone given time. We will strike where they do not expect, then vanish before they can respond. We will turn their own rigid procedures and protocols against them." Over the next hours, Gandalf outlined a strategy of asymmetric resistance. Small cells of fighters would conduct coordinated operations throughout the city, not directly attacking Imperial forces, but disrupting their supply lines, communications, and intelligence gathering. Other groups would focus on evacuating civilians from areas of heavy Imperial presence, establishing safe houses and escape routes. "Remember," he cautioned them, "our goal is not to defeat the Empire militarily. That is beyond our current capabilities. Rather, we seek to make their occupation of Jeddah so costly and frustrating that they question its value. We aim not to break their grip, but to loosen it, creating space for hope and resistance to grow." As the Resistance Council dispersed to implement their new strategy, Chirrut remained behind with Gandalf. "There is something you should know," the blind monk said once they were alone. "The remaining Inquisitors have requested reinforcements. Our spies report that an Imperial shuttle is expected within days, bringing someone of great importance to oversee the hunt personally." Gandalf frowned. "Someone of importance? Another Inquisitor, perhaps?" Chirrut's expression was grave. "No, someone far more dangerous. There are whispers among the Imperial officers, rumors that Lord Vader himself may come to Jeddah to deal with the Grey Prophet." The name meant little to Gandalf personally, but he had heard enough from the resistance fighters to understand the significance. Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer, a dark lord of the Sith who had helped hunt the Jedi to near extinction, a being of terrible power and cruelty, more machine than man according to some accounts. "If this Vader comes," Gandalf mused, "it may provide an opportunity as well as a threat. Such high-ranking servants of darkness are often the linchpins upon which tyranny depends. Remove them, and the entire structure may begin to crumble." Chirrut looked troubled. "You do not understand the power of Darth Vader. He has slaughtered entire battalions single-handedly. Jedi Masters have fallen before him. His command of the dark side is second only to the Emperor himself." Gandalf's eyes took on a distant look, as though gazing across time and space to battles long past. "I have faced such powers before. The Witch King of Angmar, Lord of the Nazgul, whom no living man could kill. Saruman the White, greatest of my order, corrupted by his hunger for power. The Balrog of Morgoth, a demon of the ancient world." His expression hardened with resolve. "I did not prevail through superior strength, but through sacrifice, through faith in powers greater than myself, through the courage of unexpected allies." He placed a reassuring hand on Chirrut's shoulder. "Have faith, my friend. Darkness, no matter how vast, cannot extinguish the smallest flame if that flame refuses to yield." The blind monk nodded slowly, drawing strength from Gandalf's conviction. "I am one with the Force," he murmured, "and the Force is with me." "Indeed it is," Gandalf agreed, "and perhaps, in this hour of need, it has brought me to your galaxy precisely for this confrontation. If so, I shall not shirk my duty, no matter the cost." As Chirrut left to join the Resistance fighters, Gandalf remained alone in the ancient chamber, contemplating what was to come. He drew the Inquisitor's lightsaber from within his robes, studying the strange weapon. Unlike his staff, which channeled powers that had been part of his being since his creation by the Valar, this device was purely technological, a tool rather than an extension of self. Yet there was more to it than mere machinery. At its heart lay a kyber crystal, one that had once shone with the light side of the Force but had been corrupted, made to bleed until it burned with crimson energy. Gandalf could sense the pain within the crystal, the violation of its natural state. "Perhaps," he murmured to himself, "there is healing possible even for this." Setting the lightsaber aside, Gandalf closed his eyes and entered a deep meditation. If he was to face this Darth Vader, he would need all his strength and wisdom. More importantly, he would need clarity about his purpose in this realm. He had been sent to Middle-earth as an emissary of the Valar, forbidden from matching power with power, tasked instead with inspiring and guiding the free peoples in their struggle against darkness. Did those same constraints apply here, in this distant galaxy, or had he been brought to this realm for a different purpose, one that might require more direct action? The answer did not come easily, but as he sank deeper into communion with the cosmic forces that flowed through all creation, Gandalf began to understand. This galaxy's force was not so different from the flame of Anor that had empowered the Istari. Both were manifestations of the same fundamental creative energy that underpinned all existence, and just as that flame could be channeled toward creation or destruction, this force had its light and dark aspects. What mattered was not the power itself, but how it was used, and to what end. His purpose remained what it had always been: to stand against the shadow, to kindle hope in the hearts of the oppressed, to remind all free beings that darkness, no matter how overwhelming it might seem, was but a passing thing. If that purpose now required him to confront a Dark Lord directly, so be it. He had done so before, had even fallen in that confrontation only to be sent back until my task is done. When Gandalf emerged from his meditation, his eyes shone with renewed purpose. Whatever trials awaited him on Jedha, whatever dark powers he might face, he would meet them not as Gandalf the Grey or even Gandalf the White, but simply as what he had always been beneath those titles: a guardian of the light, a servant of the secret fire, a defender of all that was good and beautiful and worthy of preservation across the infinite cosmos. The coming days saw the resistance on Jedha grow more organized under Gandalf's guidance. Small victories accumulated, supply convoys disrupted, communications jammed, Imperial patrols led into ambushes in the maze-like streets of the Holy City. The wizard rarely participated directly in these operations, preferring to advise and coordinate from the shadows, but his influence was evident in their increasing effectiveness. The Imperial response grew more brutal with each setback. Public executions became commonplace. Entire city blocks were razed on suspicion of harboring rebels. Hovering probe droids penetrated even the narrowest alleyways, scanning for hidden passages to the catacombs below. The people of Jedha suffered terribly for their resistance, yet their determination only hardened with each new atrocity. Then, 7 days after Gandalf's confrontation with the First Inquisitor, the distinctive silhouette of an Imperial Lambda-class shuttle descended through Jedha's atmosphere, escorted by a full squadron of TIE fighters. The shuttle's wings folded upward as it settled on the landing pad adjacent to the Imperial Command Center. A contingent of stormtroopers in polished armor formed an honor guard, standing at rigid attention as the shuttle's ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics. From the shadow of a distant rooftop, Gandalf watched through a pair of macrobinoculars borrowed from the Resistance. He had never seen the being called Darth Vader, but he recognized him immediately as a towering figure in black emerged from the shuttle. Even at this distance, Gandalf could sense the dark power that emanated from the Sith Lord, a cold malevolence that seemed to dim the very sunlight around him. "So," the wizard murmured to himself, "the shadow takes physical form at last." Beside him, Chirrut shifted uneasily. "You feel it too," the blind monk observed. "The darkness he brings with him." Gandalf lowered the macrobinoculars. "Yes, a wounded spirit, consumed by hatred and pain, yet possessed of terrible power. There is something familiar in him, something I have encountered before in those who have fallen from light into shadow." "What will you do?" Chirrut asked. "For now, observe," Gandalf replied. "This Vader has not come merely to hunt me. He serves a greater strategy, a wider purpose. I must understand his intentions before I move against him." In the days that followed, Darth Vader's presence transformed the Imperial occupation. Gone were the relatively predictable patrol patterns and security protocols that the Resistance had learned to exploit. In their place came a fluid, adaptive strategy that seemed to anticipate the rebels' movements. Ambushes were countered before they could be sprung. Safe houses were raided with uncanny precision. Supply caches were discovered and destroyed. Most disturbing of all, Vader himself began to hunt through the city, moving with implacable purpose, drawn by disturbances in the Force that revealed the presence of those sensitive to its currents. Several of the Resistance's Force-attuned members, including former Jedi Padawans and Temple Guardians, were captured or killed in these targeted raids. Gandalf, recognizing the pattern, made a difficult decision. He would have to separate himself from the main Resistance, becoming a solitary target to draw Vader's attention away from the others. He shared this plan with Chirrut and the Resistance leadership in a solemn council held deep within the catacombs. "It is too dangerous," objected one of the cell leaders, a former Republic soldier who had fought in the Clone Wars. "Vader will kill you, and with you will die the hope you've brought to Jeddah." "Hope does not reside in any one being," Gandalf countered gently. "It lives in all who choose to resist darkness, to stand for what is right even when victory seems impossible. You do not need me to continue that fight." "But your powers," protested another Resistance leader. "You're the only one who can face Vader directly." Gandalf smiled sadly. "Perhaps. But even if I fall, my purpose here will have been fulfilled if I can buy time for your Resistance to grow, to spread beyond Jeddah to other worlds suffering under Imperial tyranny." He looked around at these brave souls who had followed him, who had risked everything because he had shown them that resistance was possible. "This is not farewell," he assured them, "merely a change in strategy. I will draw Vader away from you, lead him on a chase through the wastelands beyond the city. While his attention is fixed on me, you must accelerate our plans to evacuate the most vulnerable citizens and establish connections with resistance cells on other worlds." Though reluctant, the Council eventually agreed to Gandalf's plan. That night, under cover of darkness, the wizard slipped out of the catacombs and made his way to the edge of the Holy City. There, he deliberately used his powers to create a disturbance in the Force that would be unmistakable to one as sensitive as Vader, a beacon that challenged the Dark Lord to come and face him alone. As dawn broke over the desert wastes, Gandalf stood upon a rocky outcropping, his grey robes and hair stirring in the cool morning breeze. Behind him lay the vast, barren expanse of Jeddah's wilderness, a landscape of stone and sand that stretched to the horizon. Before him, a solitary figure in black approached, moving with mechanical precision across the uneven terrain. Darth Vader stopped at the base of the outcropping, his breathing apparatus emitting the rhythmic, rasping sound that had become a harbinger of death throughout the galaxy. For a long moment, Sith Lord and Wizard regarded each other in silence, taking the measure of their opponent. "I have been waiting for you, Darth Vader," Gandalf said at last, his voice carrying easily on the still desert air. "I thought it time we met directly, rather than through proxies and soldiers. Grey Prophet, Vader's deep, electronically amplified voice replied, "You are an unexpected presence in the Force. Neither Jedi nor Sith, yet powerful in ways unfamiliar to both." Gandalf inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the assessment. "I am what I have always been, a guardian against the shadow, a servant of the light. Names and titles matter little. Your interference on Jeddah ends today," Vader declared. "The Emperor has taken a personal interest in your abilities. You will be brought before him to share your knowledge, or you will die here." "I answer to a higher authority than your Emperor," Gandalf replied calmly. "I have stood against greater darkness than he commands. I did not bend then, and I shall not bend now." Vader's hand moved to the lightsaber at his belt. "Then you have chosen death." Gandalf gripped his staff more firmly, but made no aggressive move. "Death is not the end, Lord Vader. It is merely another path, one that we all must take in time. I have walked that path before and returned. Can you say the same?" Something in Vader's posture changed at these words, a subtle shift that suggested Gandalf's statement had struck an unexpected chord. "Your philosophical musings will not save you, old man. The Force may be strong with you, but you are not a Jedi. You have not been trained to resist the power of the dark side." "No," Gandalf agreed. "I am not a Jedi, nor am I unfamiliar with darkness." His eyes grew distant, remembering battles fought in the depths of Moria, in the dungeons of Dol Guldur, atop the peak of Zirak-Zigil. "I have faced shadow and flame before, fallen into the abyss and returned. The darkness held no dominion over me then. It shall not now." With a hiss of ignition, Vader's crimson lightsaber sprang to life. "We shall see." Gandalf raised his staff, channeling his power into a protective barrier as Vader leapt upward with inhuman strength, closing the distance between them in a single bound. The Sith Lord's first strike was brutally direct, a powerful overhead slash meant to cleave the wizard from shoulder to hip. The blade struck Gandalf's barrier with a shower of sparks and a noise like thunder. Though the lightsaber did not penetrate, the sheer force of the blow drove Gandalf back several steps. Immediately Vader pressed his advantage, raining down a series of powerful strikes that tested the limits of the wizard's defenses. Gandalf had faced many skilled opponents in his long existence, but few with the raw power and technical precision that Vader brought to bear. Each blow of the lightsaber seemed to draw on endless reserves of dark energy, each movement calculated to expose and exploit any weakness. It was all the wizard could do to maintain his protective barrier, with little opportunity to mount any offense of his own. "Your powers fail you, Grey Prophet," Vader taunted as he continued his relentless assault. "You cannot defend forever." Gandalf knew this was true. Already he could feel the strain of maintaining his defenses against such concentrated dark power. This was not a battle he could win through conventional means, not on this unfamiliar terrain against an enemy who commanded the dark side with such mastery. Yet he had faced similar odds before, against enemies no less formidable. The key had never been superior strength, but understanding the nature of his foe, finding the weakness hidden beneath the seemingly impenetrable armor of power. As he gave ground strategically, drawing Vader deeper into the rocky terrain where the Sith Lord's mobility might be somewhat constrained, Gandalf studied his opponent carefully. Beyond the intimidating black armor and mask, beyond the mechanical precision of his attacks, the wizard sensed something unexpected: conflict, pain, a spirit torn between light and dark. "You were not always this darkness," Gandalf said suddenly, parrying another strike with his staff. "I sense the light you once served, still struggling within you, buried but not extinguished." Vader's attacks faltered momentarily, then resumed with even greater fury. "The man you speak of is dead," the Sith Lord snarled, "destroyed by weakness and betrayal. No one is ever truly destroyed while their spirit endures," Gandalf countered, ducking beneath a horizontal slash and creating distance between them with a pulse of force. "Not even you, Lord Vader, for all your submission to the dark side. You know nothing of the dark side's power, Vader growled, advancing once more. I know more than you might think, Gandalf replied. I know it consumes those who wield it, promises them power while enslaving them to fear and hatred. I know it offers control while taking away choice. I know it claims to bring order while sowing only destruction. With a gesture of his gauntleted hand, Vader sent a massive boulder hurtling toward Gandalf. The wizard deflected it with his staff, but the effort cost him precious energy. Before he could recover, Vader was upon him again, lightsaber slashing in a crimson arc toward his chest. Gandalf barely managed to interpose his staff between them. The lightsaber struck the ancient wood, and for a moment it seemed the weapon forged in Valinor at the dawn of time might withstand even this technology from beyond the stars. But then, with a crack that echoed across the wasteland, the staff split in two, severed by the energy blade. The shock of this unexpected development momentarily distracted Gandalf. It was all the opening Vader needed. With a thrust of his hand, the Sith Lord seized the wizard in a telekinetic grip, lifting him from the ground and hurling him against a nearby rock face. Gandalf struck the stone with bone-jarring force, the impact driving the breath from his lungs. Before he could recover, Vader was upon him, lightsaber held to his throat, the crimson blade humming with lethal energy. Your resistance ends here, Grey Prophet, Vader declared. The Emperor will be most interested in learning the source of your powers. Gandalf, though battered and weaponless, met the Sith Lord's masked gaze without fear. Even now, you need not be what he has made you, the wizard said quietly. The choice to return to the light is always present, always possible, no matter how far into darkness one has gone. There is no return from the path I have chosen, Vader replied, but something in his mechanically filtered voice suggested doubt, a momentary crack in his certainty. Gandalf seized upon this hesitation. There is always a way back, Lord Vader. I have guided others from darkness before. Even those who believed themselves beyond redemption found their way to the light in the end. For a moment, the crimson blade wavered. Then Vader's resolve hardened once more. Enough. Your mind tricks will not work on me. Not tricks, Gandalf corrected gently. Truth. Look into the force you serve, Lord Vader. Not the darkness your Emperor has taught you to embrace, but the true force, the light that binds all living things. It has not abandoned you, even if you have turned from it. Vader's grip on his lightsaber tightened. The light is weakness. The dark side is the true nature of the Force, the source of all power. Is it? Gandalf challenged. Then why does it bring you no peace, no joy? Why must you constantly feed it with pain and hatred? True power needs no such sustenance. It simply is, eternal and unchanging. Before Vader could respond, a distant explosion echoed across the wasteland. Both wizard and Sith Lord turned toward the sound, seeing a plume of smoke rising from the direction of Jeddah City. More explosions followed, a coordinated series of detonations that suggested a major attack was underway. Vader's attention wavered, divided between his captive and the apparent rebellion occurring in the city. Gandalf, sensing an opportunity, gathered what remained of his strength for one final gambit. Your conflict distracts you, the wizard observed. Even now, part of you questions the path you have chosen, the master of you serve. You know nothing of my path, Vader snarled, returning his full attention to Gandalf. I know that it has brought you only suffering, Gandalf replied. I know that the power you wield has not healed the wounds that drive you. I know that somewhere beneath that armor beats a heart that remembers the light. With a growl of rage, Vader raised his lightsaber for a killing blow. But as the blade descended, Gandalf released the power he had been gathering, not in an attack, but in a pulse of pure light that emanated outward from his being. The light engulfed them both, temporarily blinding even Vader's enhanced visual senses. In that moment of illumination, something remarkable happened. The force around them shifted, not in conflict but in harmony, as though responding to Gandalf's invocation of its true nature. When Vader's vision cleared, the wizard was gone. The spot where he had been pinned against the rock face was empty, with no trace of his presence except for the broken pieces of his staff lying upon the stone ground. Vader stood motionless for a long moment, scanning the area with both his mechanical sensors and his attunement to the Force. But Gandalf had vanished completely, as though he had stepped between the very fabric of reality. The Sith Lord deactivated his lightsaber, clipping it back to his belt with a mechanical precision that belied the turmoil within. The Grey Prophet's words had disturbed him more than he cared to admit, touching upon doubts long buried beneath layers of dark side conditioning and cybernetic enhancements. With a last glance at the broken staff, Vader turned and strode back toward the city, where the rebellion he had been sent to crush appeared to be entering a new, more aggressive phase. The Grey Prophet would be found, eventually. No one could hide from the full might of the Empire forever. Yet as he marched across the barren landscape, Darth Vader found himself haunted by the wizard's final words, by the light that had momentarily penetrated even the darkness that was his constant companion. For the briefest of moments, something long forgotten stirred within the remnants of the man who had once been Anakin Skywalker, not quite hope, but perhaps the memory of what hope had once felt like. In the smoking ruins of what had once been an Imperial garrison on the outskirts of Jeddah City, the Resistance fighters who had mounted the diversionary attack to draw attention away from Gandalf's confrontation with Vader gathered to assess their next move. The attack had succeeded beyond their expectations, destroying not only the garrison but also a significant cache of Imperial weapons and supplies. But the cost had been high. Several of their most experienced fighters had fallen, and Imperial reinforcements were already converging on the area. Without Gandalf's guidance, without the hope his presence had inspired, many wondered if they could continue the struggle. As they debated their options, a strange light began to fill the chamber where they had taken temporary shelter. It grew in intensity until they had to shield their eyes from its brilliance. When it faded, a figure stood among them who had not been there before. Gandalf had returned, but changed. His grey robes were now white, gleaming with an inner light that seemed to push back the darkness of their surroundings. His face was the same, yet somehow younger, the lines of care and weariness less pronounced. In his hand he held not his familiar wooden staff, but the Inquisitor's lightsaber, now transformed. When he activated it, the blade that emerged was not crimson but a brilliant white, shining with the pure energy of the Kyber crystal that had been cleansed of its corruption. "Gandalf?" Chirrut whispered in awe. "Is it truly you?" The wizard smiled, the expression both gentle and powerful. "Yes, my friend, I have returned to you, through shadow and flame, as I once returned to another world in its time of need." "What happened?" one of the Resistance leaders asked. "We saw you facing Vader on the ridge. We thought surely you had fallen." "Fallen, yes, though not as you might think," Gandalf replied enigmatically. "When darkness and light meet with equal force, sometimes they create a doorway to places beyond normal perception. I walked through such a doorway, into what your traditions might call the world between worlds, or perhaps the cosmic force itself. There, I was reminded of my purpose here, my true nature that transcends the physical forms I have worn." He looked down at his transformed appearance. "Once before, I was sent back until my task was done, returned as Gandalf the White after falling in battle against a great darkness. It seems the cosmic powers that govern all realms have decided to grant me a similar renewal for the task that faces us here." The Resistance fighters regarded him with a mixture of awe and renewed hope. This being who stood before them was clearly more than the kindly wizard who had guided them. He radiated power and purpose, a living embodiment of the light they had fought to preserve. "What now?" Chirrut asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. "Vader still hunts us, the Empire still holds Jeddah. Our numbers grow fewer with each confrontation." Gandalf activated the white lightsaber once more, studying its radiant blade with a contemplative expression. "Now we take the fight beyond Jeddah," he declared. This world is but one of many suffering under imperial domination. If hope is to truly return to this galaxy, it must spread like wildfire, from planet to planet, system to system, until it can no longer be contained. He looked around at the assembled fighters, his gaze both gentle and unyielding. I cannot defeat the Emperor and Vader alone, not even with the power I now command. But I can help kindle the flames of rebellion across the stars, connecting those who fight for freedom, inspiring those who have lost hope, guiding those with the power to make a difference. He deactivated the lightsaber, returning it to his belt. Some of you must remain on Jeddah, continuing the work we have begun. Others will come with me, carrying our message to other worlds, seeking allies in our struggle against the dark side. The path will not be easy, and victory is far from certain. But remember this: darkness, no matter how vast, is only the absence of light, and light, no matter how small, can never be truly extinguished. As Gandalf the White outlined his plan for a galaxy-wide resistance against the Empire, a new chapter in the eternal struggle between light and shadow began to unfold. On Jeddah, in the heart of the Holy City, a monument would later be raised by the free citizens who eventually reclaimed their world. A simple stone pillar carved with a staff crossed with a lightsaber, and below it words that would inspire generations to come. Even the smallest light shines brightest in the deepest darkness. The tale of the Grey Prophet, who became the White Guardian, would be told and retold across countless worlds. A legend that transcended the boundaries between galaxies and reminded all who heard it that hope, once kindled, could never truly be extinguished. For as Gandalf himself had observed in another realm and another age, the shadow can only mock, it cannot make, not real, new things of its own. And in this truth lay the ultimate weakness of the Empire and all powers like it, throughout all the infinite cosmos of creation.